Welcome to this 4-player playthrough of Rome Total War, the board game. In this playthrough, the 4 factions of the core game will be racing to reach 25 victory point through a combination of military, economic, and technological achievements. The 4 factions of the board game are namely Rome, Carthage, what the board game calls Greece, but frankly they got the Macedonian flag. Alexander and Philip of Macedon are their leader, so let's just call them Macedonia. And finally what the board game calls barbarians, but here as well their legendary leader is Vercingetorix, and the faction booster should bring a German tribes faction, so let's just call them the Gallic Tribes. We already have a full 4-player game, so it will be our second one. I will not share the first game because we made several rules mistakes and some not so very smart decisions. Not that this second game will be exempt from any small mistake or that we suddenly got crazy smart, we did not. But let's say that we now have a better understanding of the relative strengths and weakness of each of our faction. For example, it took us time to figure out that Romans just have the best infantry of the game, but that they lack counters against good cavalry units. Now we know. The second game will feature the same 4 players, each of them playing the same faction again. To give you a bit of context, Rome was the dominant and leading faction during most of the game. They started a military campaign against the Gallic tribes and scored victory over victory gaining points, veteran units, and experienced generals. To be honest, the Gallic tribes had a poor approach against the Romans on the battlefield, giving too many easy victories, hence starting this vicious circle of giving more experienced units and generals, just reinforcing their opponent. The Gallic tribes were allied to Macedonia and begged for help during turns and turns, but Macedonia did not care, expanding widely in the east and building an impressive economic engine there. Carthage was a bit too passive in the game until they truly lagged in the score race, being neither a military power like Rome, nor an economic one as Macedonia. From the economic point of view, they got widely penalized for being the only faction not able to build their wonder, as they poorly planned and finally got blocked by building scarcity. They later joined the war against the Gallic tribes to start scoring more points. Finally, the Roman threat triggered a kind of backlash against them, and Macedonia stole the final victory from Rome with a mix of military victories on the battlefield, using the best of their impressive rosator of Macedonian and mercenary units, and the point benefit of their unmatched economic engine. The Gallic tribes were angry against both Rome and their so-called ally Macedonia, but they hated Rome more than Macedonia and actively contributed to the victory of Macedonia, determined to prevent a Roman victory. For this second game, we are curious to see what the narrative will be. Everyone is now aware that Macedonia should not be left alone, expanding over almost half of the map in the east. And after so many Roman victories, we understand a little bit better how their roster works. For this second game, Carthage should adopt a less passive strategy at the beginning of the game, engaging earlier in military campaigns. Having been the ultimate victims of this first game, the Gallic tribes are a little bit looked down around the table, but will they surprise us? Okay, for this second game, we will also twist a little bit some of the official rules of the board game. First, we decided that no more than only one market can be built in each player's home region. This change is intended to force each player to build more markets in independent regions, thereby creating a little bit more interesting dynamic of stealing markets with conquest. Then we do not like the way general cards work. 4- and 5-star generals have names and traits, but if your 4-star general gained a 5-star, not only does this changes his name but also all his traits, which makes no sense. We will keep the limit of maximum 1 5-star and 2 4-star generals, but generals will keep their name when upgrading, and for the trait each player will freely pick them in the trait list, each trait being available for only 1 general. When having a 4-star general, each player will then freely pick and note down 2 traits. A third one will be added to the 2 first traits when the general upgrades to 5 stars. Finally, we are fine with the building scarcity. I read on internet that some people think there is not enough roads or markets available, but being forced to build them as soon as possible before there is no more available in the bank is nice, and the scarcity of markets adds a little incentive to go conquer those of your enemy. Finally, building scarcity makes the sabotage card a strategic one to play, as you may try to destroy a market of your opponent during the agent phase, so that you can rebuild in your own territory during the spending phase. With no scarcity in building, that card has no point. We will then play with a total of 16 markets, barracks, walls, and roads available. First come, first served. Players will have to choose carefully how they want to allocate their budget in the early game between tech, military, and building expenses. All of that being said, we are now ready to start the first turn. Each player draws an initiative card. At this stage, none of them want to bid for initiative. Rome get the strongest card with an 11. For this first turn, Rome will let Macedonia start and choose to play clockwise in order to play last. And we are ready for our first agent phase. Each player draws 5 agent cards. Macedonia draws a spy card with determined troops, a steel card with expert evasion, a treaty card with expert evasion, a steel card with U2 Brutus, and a spy card with forced march. Well, a lot of useless cards at this early stage. There is nothing to steal in other faction treasury, no leader to assassinate, and at this stage no army to spy. Determined troop is a good card, but there may be no battle before some turns, so Macedonia will be better cashing in the money. Macedonia could still use the treaty card, but the question is with who? Gallic tribes have been a loyal ally in the last game, but they cannot be reached in that turn. Rome and Carthage are reachable, however, and Carthage is always a good trading partner with its tech tree. A first agent is deployed in Sparta and sails to Carthago for 3 movement points and use the 4th movement point to play the treaty card. The Carthaginian player accept the friendship of the Macedonian kingdom, and both player update their faction board to a friendly stance. The second agent is deployed as Sparta as well and uses his 5 movement points to sails to Massilia and march north to Lugdunum. The 4 other agent cards are all sold for 9 gold. The Carthaginian player draws a treaty card with prepared battlefield, an assassination card with epic envelopment, a riots card with regional revolt, a trade card with disruptive storm, and a protest card with catch enemy. Once again, a lot of powerful cards, but not at this early stage. The treaty and trade card will be use, and the regional revolt may be kept for later. The other cards will be cash in. Okay, Carthage, remember how bullied were the Gallic tribes in the last game, and what a faithful ally they have been to Macedonia in the endgame. Well, those Gallic tribes are a bit far in the map, and Carthage should more be clashing with Rome and Macedonia, so let's try to secure them as ally this time. The only problem is that the treaty card must be used in a 2+ gold city, and Cenabum is out of reach for this turn. Okay, then let's keep the treaty card for the next turn then. A first agent is deployed in Cordoba and uses 5 movement point to sail to Diororidum, and then enter Cenabum. The second agent is deployed in Carthago Nova and march north to Lemanum, where he uses the trade card. Each faction earns 2 gold from the trade. Carthage then keep the treaty and the riot card and sell the 2 other cards for 4 gold. The Gallic tribes draws a protest card with untimely death, a spy card with prepare ambush, a sabotage card with regional revolt, a protest card with expert evasion, and a double agent card with forced march. Well, at this early stage, the Gallic tribes' feeling are quite simple. We may have started a whole new campaign, but they still hate Rome. They also have mixed feelings against Carthage, who joined Rome in the last game against them, and Macedonia, their so-called ally that the Gallic tribes helped in winning the whole game, while they totally ignore the Gallic call for help in the beginning of the campaign, just expanding crazy in Anatolia. Well, no trade or treaty cards in their hands, the other are good but useless at this early stage. So, let's just spread some protests in the Roman Empire. A first agent is deployed in Lugdunum and spends 4 movement points to reach Arminium, where he spreads some protest. A second agent is deployed in Lugdunum and spends 4 movement points to reach Roma, where he spreads some other protests. Good. With those 2 protests, Rome will lose tax revenues in the next tax round. The Gallic player sells all of his remaining cards for 8 gold. And now finally to Rome. The Roman Republic draws a trade card with inspired agents, a spy card with determined troops, a bribe card with inspired general, a spy card with willing volunteers, and a sabotage card with determined troops. The Roman player is puzzled. He wants to keep a lot of his cards for later, but he also knows that at this early stage he would be better off cashing in. Well, the inspired general is a killer and the determined troops as well. Well, the other question is who deserve to trade with him. Not the Gallic tribes for sure, but what about Carthage and Macedonia? Both of them looks like chasing the Gallic tribes. Should he as well? He still wants to march north to get experience, territories, and victory points. This time he is aware of the Macedonian threat alone in the east, and he hopes Carthage is aware of this. After all, Macedonia won the last game, not him. Carthage looks like a relevant ally, and maybe he should be less harsh on the Gallic this time and put more focus on the east. Let's trade with Carthage. His first agent is deployed in Roma and sails to Carthago, where it plays his trade card. Each player earns 2 gold. His second agent will be kept undeployed, and all the other cards are sold for 8 gold. We now move to taxation. At this early stage, all player earns 12 gold but Rome, who only collect 10 gold because of the protests. Not a huge difference. Rome still manages to be the richest faction, with the Gallic tribes both having 24 gold in their treasury, versus 23 for Macedonia and 22 for Carthage. And now to the campaign phase. Okay, this first campaign phase will also be the occasion for each faction to define their general. As I said earlier, we are playing a bit different than the base game by choosing the trait of our general and naming them, so the name and trait doesn't completely change when the general gain a star. And we start with Macedonia. Having a quick look to the starting armies, Army 1 and 2 are fit for conquest while Army 3 and 4 are too weak. They may be merged together or give units to the 2 main army. Let's have a look to general now. Macedonia starts with 1 4-star general, 2 3-stars general, and 1 2-star one. The command of the main army 1 will be given to the young Prince Alexander, who is set to start as the 4-star general. He will receive the trait morale booster and scouting expert. His father, King Philip of Macedon, will be the 3-star general leading Army 2. The old Antipatros will be set as the 3-star general leading Army 3, while the young Parmenion will be the 2-star general leading Army 4. For this first turn, Alexander will be in charge of conquering Thrace, so that the Macedonian can exploit their tech advantage in recruiting mercenary. After submitting Thrace, Alexander will have the mission to follow the Danube south and conquer more independent regions around the Balkan to reinforce Macedonian influence in the region before the Roman come. Alexander army is deployed in Stagira and march north to Odessus. Alexander roll for Odessus and gets a blank, a wound, and a kill, losing 1 hoplite. With still 4 main battle cards, Alexander march west to Nisus, where it rolls 2 blanks, and then west again to Dyrrachium, where it rolls 1 blank and 1 kill, losing another hoplite. Antipatros and Parmenion are then both deployed in Byzantium. Both army exchange 1 hoplite, reinforcing Antipatros. Parmenion then uses his last 2 movement points to reach Thessalonica, ready to reinforce Alexander. Well, the army is only at 2 main battle cards, so Parmenion is mainly acting as a decoy here. With 4 main battle cards under his command, Antipatros crosses the strait to Pergamon, where he rolls a blank and a wound, and uses his last movement point to reach Ephesus, where it rolls a kill and a wound, losing 1 hoplite. Finally, King Philip of Macedon is deployed in Byzantium, marches north to Odessus, and uses his last 2 movement points to cross the Danube and reach Tanais, where he rolls 2 wounds, losing 1 hoplite. Finally, the 2 fleets are deployed in Athens and Ephesus and merged in only 1 5-ships fleet, which is left patrolling in Aegean Sea. And that ends a good first turn for Macedonia, with 6 independent regions falling under his control. And now it is time for Carthage to set up his generals. Looking at his army, he has 2 armies fit for conquest, Army 1 and 2 with 5 main battle cards, and 2 smaller armies with 3 and 2 main battle cards. For generals like Macedonia, he starts with 1 4-star, 2 3-star, and 1 2-star generals. Okay. Hannibal Barca will be set up as a 4-star general and will take command of Army 1. He will receive the trait Morale Booster and Mercenary Loyalty. Hasdrubal Barca will take command of Army 2 as a 3-star general, Mago Barca of Army 3 as a 3-star general, and Hasdrubal Gisco of Army 4 as a 2-star general. Similarly to Macedonia, Carthage wants to secure mercenary region fast to exploit the advantage of his tech tree. Hannibal is deployed in Cordoba and marches north to Ebera, where he rolls 2 wounds, losing a Libyan spearman. With only 4 main battle cards left, Hannibal does not want to risk Scalabais, where he could roll 3 skulls and collapse. He safely chooses to attack Numantia, where he rolls AS and a wound, losing a Numidian cavalry. Finally, he uses his last movement point to attack Bakara, where he rolls a wound and a blank. Hasdrubal Barca is then deployed to Thapsus to attack Dimity, where it rolls 2 wounds and a skull, losing 2 main battle cards. The Numidian have fought bravely and Hasdrubal loses a citizen cavalry and a Libyan spearman. With only 3 main battle cards left, Hasdrubal won't take the risk of more conquest. His last armies are quite weak. Mago do not have more main battle cards than Hasdrubal, and Giscon only have 2 main battle cards. Mago is deployed in Sirta, uses 1 movement point to reach Hasdrubal in Dimity, and both army uses 1 movement point to reorganize, with Mago transferring a Libyan spearman to Hasdrubal. Hasdrubal then uses his last movement point to attack Sala, where it rolls 2 wounds, losing a Libyan spearman. Carthage will stop here with Giscon remaining undeployed. That first turn has been a bit disappointing. To end on a positive note, let's use this action card that he saved during the agent phase. Hannibal used his regional revolt against Macedonia in Odessus. Left with no army nor garrison, the Thracian people revolt against the Macedonian kingdom and become an independent region again. If they want the region back, Macedonian people will have to roll again some red dice. Moreover, the supply line to King Philip army is now cut off and he won't be able to recruit in the next spending phase. And it is now up to the Gallic tribes to set up their generals. The Gallic tribes start with more armies fit for conquest, with 3 armies with 5 main battle cards and 1 with 4, but unfortunately there is a lot of but. First, he has slightly less good generals, with 1 4-star, 1 3-star, and 2 2-star. Then, and this is the main problems, the Gallic tribes will be facing a lot of limitations in recruiting and combining his armies for at least the first 3 turns, until they unlock some technological achievement that lift those limitations. In the last game, the Gallic tribes expanded fast in the beginning, soon becoming the richest and highest tax revenue faction of the board. But all of this collapsed fast when Rome, and soon after Carthage, start attacking them while the Gallic tribes did not reach unification yet. The Gallic tribes them wasted a lot of money, only to see their armies collapse and Rome and Carthage plunder their home region. For this game, let's keep the expanding fast part, but also let's try to avoid as much as possible triggering a conflict in the first turns of the game. And first, let's set up the generals. Army 1 will be led by a 4-star Vercingetorix with the trait Morale Booster and Inspired Fighter. Army 2 will be led by a 3-star Dumnorix, Army 2 by a 2-star Critognatos, and finally Army 4 with Highland Warrior will be led by a 2-star Vercassivillanos. The Gallic tribes may start with more men, they also start with recruitment constraints, no more than 2 main battle cards and 1 skirmisher per army and per turn, and no mixing of Lowland and Highland Warrior. Armies cannot join their forces for battle until unification. So let's expand, but let's expand carefully. Vercingetorix will lead the expansion in the north, with Vercassivillanos covering him by marching a bit more south in the Alps with his Highland warriors. Vercingetorix is deployed in Tillafurcum and marches east to Vicus Gothi, where he rolls a skull and a blank, losing a lowland warrior. Vercingetorix will still use a second movement point to reach Casurgis, where he rolls a special and a wound, losing a slinger. Vercassivillanos is then deployed in Lugdunum, and uses 2 movement points to enter the Alps into Octodorus, where he rolls 2 blanks. With no loss after this battle and still 1 movement point left, Vercassivillanos could move deeper in the Alps. However, another constraint of the Gallic tribes is that if 2 Gallic armies finish their turn next to each other, they will fight, until some degree of unification between the tribes is achieved in the tech tree. Vercingetorix then uses his last movement point to attack Budorgis, where he rolls 2 blanks. Vercassivillanos can now move into Iavuvum, where he rolls a wound and a skull, losing a Highland warrior. Dumnorix is deployed into Leminum and marches south to Nemassos, where he rolls 2 blanks. He then marches further south to Burjadala, where he rolls a blank and a skull, losing 1 lowland warrior. This lowland warrior army near the Rhone River and the Highland warrior in the Alp are the 2 that are the most at risk of fighting in the next turns. Because they will be limited in recruitment volume per army over the next turns, the Gallic player doesn't want to deplete them too much, so let's stop there for Dumnorix. Finally, Carthaginatos is deployed in Nemeticum and crosses the strait to Londinium, where he rolls a blank and a wound. He pushes his exploration further into Eboracum, where he rolls a kill and a wound, losing one lowland warrior. With no risk of being attacked and still 4 main battle cards, Carthaginatos can complete the conquest of Great Britain by attacking Dumnonia, where he rolls 2 wounds, losing 1 lowland warrior. Once again, Gallic tribes have used their number advantage to expand widely in the first turn. They will enjoy a nice income advantage at least for this turn. However, due to their recruitment constraints, they have been a bit more cautious in their moves than during the last game, being careful about loss of men and respecting a buffer with Rome this time. Will it be enough to sustain their conquests for this new campaign? And now it is up to Rome to finish that first campaign turn. Rome, who chose to play last after winning the initiative. The Romans start with an uneasy position in the center of the map, and it is hard for them to expand into independent regions without clashing with one of their neighbors. That uneasy position is compensated by the best infantry of the game and better starting generals, with 2 4-star generals and 2 3-star. Looking at starting armies, Army 1 and 2 include 6 and 5 main battle cards and are almost ready to start a war from turn 1. Armies 3 and 4, with only 2 and 3 main battle cards respectively, are weaker and even unfit for expansion into independent regions. Let's set up the generals. Army 1 will be led by Gaius Julius Caesar, a 4-star general with the trait scouting expert and battlefield expert. Army 2 will be led by Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, a 4-star general with the traits inspired fighter and morale booster. With only 2 main battle cards, Army 3 will be led by Titus Labienus, while the bigger Army 4 will be led by Marcus Licinius Crassus. In the last game, the war between Rome and the Gallic tribes started around Massilia and took several turns before being triggered. Julius Caesar had watched a Gallic army entering the Alps, and he can assume it is most likely a Highland warrior army. He also knows they lost 1 unit during their expansion. Should he attack them straight? Actually, his tax income is still low, and even lower because of the protests, so he may also just want to expand into independent regions. And finally, performing police action is more effective to get back revenue without risking any man. Okay. First, Pompey is deployed into Roma, where he uses 1 movement point to perform police action and remove the protests. Then Fleet 1 is deployed in Roma. Pompey then uses 1 movement point to embark, and another movement point to disembark in Syracuse, where the fleet has sailed. There Pompey rolls a wound and a blank, losing no troops in his conquest. Caesar would have loved to strike that Gallic army in the Alp, but the problem is that neither Crassus nor Titus has big enough armies to subdue the unrest in Arminius. From a tax perspective, removing unrest is maybe the most effective action to perform now. Caesar is deployed in Arminius, where he uses 1 movement point to restore order. He then lacks the movement points to enter the Alps, so he just moves west to Genu, where he rolls Aes and a wound, losing 1 Volite, and uses his last movement point to reach Mediolanum, where he rolls a wound and a blank. The 2 other armies are too weak to be worth deploying yet, so Rome will end his turn. And we are now moving to the first spending phase of this game. Macedonia is facing the costliest tech tree of the 4 factions, but it can lower the cost of each tech once it develops illumination. At this stage, all factions will likely rush extra agents, as it is giving them more agent cards and hence more revenue in the agent phase. King Philip was planning to build a barracks in Thrace and start playing his mercenary advantage, but a regional rebellion instigated by Carthage voided that. Well, no need to spend on mercenary recruiter yet then. On the tech side, King Philip will spend on extra agent and Olympic Games for 4 gold. On the building side, remember we decided to add a constraint. No more than 1 market inside home region. This is designed to push the player to take a bit of risk and put more weight on independent regions. Also remember that there is a building scarcity. Only 16 markets are available to be built. Build them fast or there won't be any markets left to build. King Philip then chooses to build 2 markets, one in Athens and the other one in Ephesus, covering the 2 ports of the Aegean Sea. That costs him 4 gold. Well, despite that he does not feel the need for fortified or garrison cities, there is still a wide buffer between him and other factions. He still spends 2 more gold to build a road from Athens to Larissa and Thessalonica. Time to reinforce armies. Philip is trapped in Tanais and cannot take the risk of moving without further recruitment. Either Alexander or Parmenion will have to attack Thrace again to re-establish the supply line. In the south, Antipatros should expand further into Anatolia. King Philip spends 12 gold to recruit 4 hoplites, 1 peltastoi and 1 Illyrian infantry. 2 hoplites and the peltastoi join Alexander, the 2 other hoplites and the Illyrian infantry join Antipatros. Macedonia ends this spending turn with 1 gold left in its treasury. And now to Carthage. Like Macedonia, Hannibal would like to play on his mercenary recruitment advantage. However, he did not dare to attack Scalabais in the last turn. The Numidian mercenaries have been submitted, but they are only skirmishers. Hannibal is more than 4 regions away, so he cannot recruit them, and the nearby armies are already almost full with skirmishers. Well, to sum up, he can save gold on barracks and mercenary tech for that turn. On the tech side, Hannibal will only spend on trade fleet and extra agent for 5 gold. On the building side, he spends 6 gold to build 2 markets, one in Carthago and the other one in Dimity, and to connect by road Carthago with Dimity and Thapsus. Finally, 10 gold is spent to recruit 5 Libyan spearmen. 2 will join Hannibal and the 3 other Hasdrubal. Carthage ends his turn with 1 gold left in his treasury, and now moves to the Gallic tribes. Caesar did not attack in the Alps, but the Gallic tribes could feel it was close. Vercingetorix still feels he should avoid any conflict before unification, and he may just adopt a more defensive stance. After all, he already has quite a huge empire. It may be better to defend it properly this time. On the tech side, it is crucial to fill the last line as soon as possible and to reach national unity. The first line may also be useful as well, as it is providing cavalry units, making the Gallic roster more competitive, especially against the Roman, who don't have a natural counter against cavalry. On the tech side, Vercingetorix spends 8 gold for reduced antipathy, so that his armies can end a turn next to each other without fighting extra agents and pony riders. On the building side, Vercingetorix spends 8 gold to build a market in Diorordum, another one in Londinium, 2 roads connecting Diorordum to Cenabum and Leminum, and a barracks in Diorordum. Well, the Gallic tribes are clearly willing to rush the construction of their wonder. Remember, they need to do it in a fully developed region, with full connection to nearby regions, so Diorordum is a good option as you only need 2 roads to be fully connected. Carthage will face the same constraint, while Rome and Macedonia have tech that allow them to build the wonder without constraint. Vercingetorix is then left with only 8 gold to recruit. Dealing with recruitment constraint, 2 Highland warrior joins Vercassivillanos, 1 lowland Vercingetorix and another 1 Dumnorix. Gallic tribes end this turn with no gold in their treasury. And finally, to Rome. Well, Rome has quite an inexpensive tech tree, so the Senate decides to spend 7 gold to develop Scorpio, Onager, extra agents, and road builder. With a full column completed, Rome immediately scores 1 victory point. On the building side, Rome spends 5 gold to build 1 market in Roma and 1 market in Syracuse, and to connect Roma to Perugia and Genu. One of the roads is indeed free thanks to the road builder tech. The Senate is left with 12 gold to recruit. Okay, on the next turn, securing the Balliers Island and their mercenaries will be a key goal of the Senate, and that may be a mission for Pompey. Indeed, in the last game, switching to the imperial roster left the Roman army with no velite and hence no skirmishers, which was a real pain. Let's avoid that during this game. Caesar only needs some skirmishers, which will be cheap to buy, and Crassus may be upgraded to a full army to expand a bit into independent regions. The Senate really feels like going after the Gallic tribes for a war, but they also know Macedonia is the true danger alone in the east. They hope they will be able to secure an alliance with Carthage, as the interest of the 2 factions should match well. Or would it make sense to just adopt a friendly stance with those Gallic tribes? Well, let's see how the game develops. Caesar spends 2 gold to recruit 2 Velites, Pompey 2 gold to recruit 1 Italian infantry, and Crassus 8 gold to recruit 1 Italian infantry, 1 Republican legionary, and 1 allied cavalry. And Rome ends this turn with no gold in its treasury. With 3 already almost full armies, we can feel that Rome is not so far from their first military expedition. Who will they strike first? The Gallic tribes in the Alps or the Macedonian in the Balkans?